Introduce our final speaker and the highlights for today's webinar. Mr. David Lester, please. Mr. Lester.
Hi, and thank you for the introduction. I think for me, the last two speakers actually have been incredibly informative, especially hearing about Ryan and the support that he gets. So I've taken a lot from that, and hopefully I can add to that. So if we can start sharing. So as the introduction just said, my name is David Lester. I'm Group Learning Services Director for Nisai. I'm based in the UK, although we have representation in the region. We've got a number of colleagues who are joining us today in this session. What I'd like to do is give a bit of context behind Nisai, the reason we're here today, look more at empowering parents of children with special education needs and disability, and then just cover off how we do it as an organisation. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So Nisai have worked in the field of online education for 25 years, whilst in the last 18, 19 months with COVID, the awareness and acceptance of online learning has become far greater. It's something which we've been doing for a while, and we have understood the benefits of how online, when delivered in the right way, can engage those learners, children, young people and adults with special education needs. Our focus is very much on inclusivity and pathways, so not just looking at the here and now, but understanding where education and student aspirations can take them and progress onto. We have international representation across Asia. I believe we've got colleagues here today from Brunei, Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, and also Bangladesh and Vietnam. But then representation extends across Middle East and North Africa, as well as Europe, with our main base in the UK. Our partnerships and a lot of the work which we've been doing over the last 18 months in particular have been with organisations including UNESCO. We are in the fortunate position, a unique position of being an online provider that is approved by the UK Department of Education, which in one way is great, but we also know that we need that local knowledge, and that's where we work with local partners internationally. We are a centre of excellence for the inclusion quality mark, and inclusivity is key to the success of Nisai, but also key to the progression and development of our learners. Our classes are some of the most inclusive anywhere in the world, and we've seen growth based on longevity, consistency and sustainability. The key to what we do is the fact that whilst we talk about online learning, we're not a technology company who's trying to educate. We're an education company who uses technology to make education more accessible. Next slide, please. So there is an overriding belief that everyone has equal value and should have access to high quality education around the world. We've heard the story about Ryan this morning, and autism shouldn't be a reason why a child shouldn't be educated. Quite often we just need a different way of approaching this, and this is something which we have worked on extensively, and as well as those disabilities that you potentially can't see, we also work very much with those who have physical disability as well. Next slide, please. The key to all of this is about providing a holistic learning experience for both traditional and non-traditional learners. I saw a message come up in the chat earlier on about how COVID and how learning is as relevant to mainstream children as it is to those with SEN. And one of the things which we will be doing later on is just sharing a 5-10 minute run through of the Nisai Virtual Academy. And I think while something can also be holistic, the human interaction of the teachers, looking at development of well-being and socialisation is also key, as well as the academic progress of the child. Next slide, please. So when we look at the holistic approach, it is about developing the whole child. It's about nurture and support. It's about having teachers who come with a specialism, in particular with regards to subject, but also being able to work those with learning difference. Wellbeing support can be online, but also, as we found, we have a team of individuals who support learners on a one-to-one basis. And during COVID and during the current pandemic, it's quite clear that social anxiety is increasing for those, not just with SEN, but young people who are and who would have been seen as being well-rounded individuals are struggling with the pressures that have been enforced on them. Looking at the development of knowledge is one thing, but also the progression in soft skills. And our experience and learners who we've worked with come to us quite often with a broken and checkered education background. They've maybe been in education or come out of it. They come to us with low self-esteem, low confidence. And for us to ensure engagement and ensure access to education, actually sometimes we need to work on the soft skills before we introduce the academic element. Education, both physically and also online, needs to be personalised, and we're in a very fortunate position where we look at an inclusive classroom, we can still ensure that learning experience is personalised, whether it be through extension tasks, and just meeting those individual needs of the child. Delivering the lessons needs to be friendly, it needs to be supportive. We need to make sure that students feel safe and feel encouraged to take part in lessons. But irrespective of the barrier, we also need to make sure that we have an expectation and confidence in our students. As I say, their children can quite often be labelled. They cannot quite often be put in a box, but actually they are just children. They are all individuals, irrespective of the barrier to learning which they're possibly struggling with. They need to have aspirations, and we need to be able to encourage that. Next slide, please. So we support learning through innovative education that is accessible and affordable. We, going back to the initial, one of the earlier slides about education being accessible and everyone having equal value, a background shouldn't be a blocker to be able to access education and quality assured education at that. One of the comments from the previous speaker was about issues with infrastructure, poor internet connectivity, and considerations then need to be made on the way the delivery is carried out and the resource which is being delivered as part of that classroom. Next slide, please. So many of the people who are attending today will know this, but just to cover it off, what are special education needs? It's where a child or a young person has a special education need and disability, if they have learning difficulty or a disability that means they need special health and education support. Next slide, please. Our experience has covered teaching learners from various different backgrounds, whether we're looking at those with autism, Asperger's, attention deficit. Process delay is something which is becoming more and more common, and we have adapted our delivery method so that it can allow for that. So as well as live sessions where students are in classes with their peers, there are also recordings that they can then go back to and recap and review the lesson as it was taught. We work with many learners who struggle with chronic fatigue, those in an increasing number with social anxiety and mental health issues. This has been exacerbated during the pandemic and during COVID. We are finding many different types of mental health that's coming through. One of the challenges that we've had over in Europe, and that it's been seen over in other countries, including North America, Australia, challenges with the weather, climate change. And in the last couple of months, we are seeing young people being referred to us who have a phobia of weather. And that is then coming down to looking at consequences. And this then means that they will be worried about leaving the home, will be worried about accessing education. So we have a way of working with parents and with schools to be able to make this education accessible to them. But also those with physical disability as well, whether it be hearing impairments, and we have worked closely with an organisation called Gemma Learning in Indonesia, who support learners with hearing impairment, but also additional needs as well. Next slide, please. So we see the challenges that are faced relating to special needs students and the arguments of inclusion versus isolation. I've talked about our inclusive classes, where many of our learners will possibly struggle with the mainstream environment. They then become isolated, and with local lockdowns, we've seen challenges of children not being able to get out. Identifying consistent and proven solutions to engage hard to reach learners is also difficult, especially when we're looking at learners in possibly more remote areas rather than urban and city centres. Identifying teachers who have the specialism and have the skills to support children with SEN. Specialised services to meet specific needs. I remember speaking to a senior leader in a school once who said, well, why don't you take all your autistic learners and put them all in one class? Surely that makes it easier. I had to explain that you can get a group of children who've all got autism, but they're still individuals. They will still have individual needs. Promoting and embracing neurodiversity, and the difficulty of identifying organisations to support a whole child approach, rather than just focusing either on the well-being or the academic. They should go hand in hand. Identifying organisations with a track record. We've heard about knowledge of parents and being able to provide knowledge so that they know what decisions they can make, but also identifying a consistent solution, whether it be, as I say, an education that is accessed from a city or a rural area. Next slide, please. So what is empowerment? We've heard one definition of it. At a basic level, the term empowerment simply means becoming more powerful. Personal empowerment therefore means taking control of a situation and not allowing others to control it for you. And I think what we found from the first speaker is, with that knowledge, you can take control, help to develop your child. It was an incredibly inspiring story. Next slide, please. So what's needed to empower parents? A specific goal is always going to be key, whether that be education in the home, education in a physical school setting, increasing knowledge, understanding what's available, what the challenges are, and what the barriers or the obstacles are that might stop that access to education. We need to ensure that parents have confidence in their decision. Making a good choice or a bad choice, as a parent, you always worry about doing the best thing for your child. Having that confidence that it is the right decision in whatever form it takes is going to be key. And skills to be able to understand and support. It's, for me, during COVID and looking at homeschooling, we're at a point where parents should be allowed to be parents rather than teachers, being able to support their child from that. But they should also have the ability to see impact and the progress that's related to that decision of the education that was put in place. And also ultimately have an end goal, which goes back to a child having aspirations and knowing where they want to head, whether that be higher education, employment, whatever it might be. Next slide, please. So how does this relate to online and remote learning? So parents have a choice in which school their child will attend. We work with many schools and many parents, and what we look for is a complementary approach to learning. So we work with schools where we support them in transitioning students and children back into school, but also we can take the education into the home as well. There's options as to where a child can access education. There's options relating to curriculum. We understand that not all children will be able to undertake 6, 7, 8, 9 subjects. So let's find a curriculum and an education offer that is appropriate to the needs of that child, whether it be starting with 1 or 2 subjects and then building up from there. Choices between purely academic and whole child development, and options between long and short-term support. It's all very much about what the child needs rather than what the expectation might be in terms of what is the norm. And parents also have choices about what role they wish to play in the support of their child, whether it be there from a just purely a family basis or a support basis, or whether they do want to be more involved in the academic element. Next slide, please. So how does Nisai empower parents? If we go back to the initial points or the early points where we're looking at a specific goal, very much about identifying the most appropriate educational experience for a parent's child. Considerations around quality assurance, support, and the curriculum which would be accessed. Increasing the parents' knowledge through awareness sessions. We spend a lot of our time imparting knowledge on curriculum, well-being support, and whole child development. When we look at the confidence in the decision, we support parents in that decision, and where there are questions, we have local support teams. We have a teaching centre in Brunei, we have a customer and student support team based in Vietnam, who are there to help with any questions that might be based around the child's need or child's progress. When we look at skills to be able to understand and support, we provide documentation and support from, say, the regional teams, and the ability to see impact and progress of the decision comes in the form of terminal reports, which we provide. So at any point, a parent will be able to see the progress which their child's making. And as I say, the end goal, where they're going to be, yes, we need to look at the here and now, but education is about a long-term journey that students and parents' child will be on. Next slide, please. So how we support learners with SEN. Next slide. So where we look at the 4 key areas of special education needs, if we look at communication, interaction, Nisai provides lessons with no webcam moves, the anxiety associated with face-to-face. We have various communication channels that students can use. So where we're looking to increase confidence and self-esteem, students will quite often start with us where they're in a class with other students, but they'll use a private chat or maybe use symbols to interact and engage within the lesson, but then they progress onto public chats and microphone. We have measurable progress through those channels, and this then focuses on the development of soft skills, and anonymity within the class removes the anxiety of engaging with peers. All our lessons are timetabled based on ability rather than age. So that first line differentiation and working at similar levels immediately starts to put everybody on a level playing field. Where we look at cognition and learning, as I say, we have timetables based on ability. We have an offer to support low levels of English, and where we have recordings, students are able to go back and review topics as they were taught, either on the same day, same week, or later in the academic year. Next slide, please. Where we look at social, emotional, and mental health, shorter lessons to support learners with attention deficit. Our lessons tend to be 30 minutes in duration. That's just about long enough for learners to be able to access, but we found that the progress learners make in shorter lessons is far greater than sitting somebody there and trying to teach them for 45 minutes to an hour. Smaller class sizes are there to support anxiety, and where we've heard about sensitivity to noise and distraction, the smaller classes definitely help with that, and with mics muted, there's not a lot of noise going on. Private chat helps those with a lack of confidence in the subject, but still allows them to interact within the lesson, and the recorded lessons allow the learners to recap. The key bit here is socialisation in a safe environment. Any parent will want their child to be safe and safe online, and everything that goes through the virtual academy is moderated, including the social aspect through Nisai clubs and societies. And then finally, we look at those with physical and sensory, so less noise interaction and distraction due to microphone controls, but also text chats as well. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to finish off with one of our case studies, who was a young lady who'd been attending a medical needs school. I supported her through the transition from year 11, so after she'd done her one lot of qualifications, into post-16. She was struggling with autism and severe social anxiety, and I remember going out and meeting her for the first time, and she spent the whole hour just looking at the carpet. She was listening, she was taking it in, but wouldn't really engage. She couldn't attend college, would only speak to immediate family members. After a period of time with us, she achieved her qualifications. She went on to college. She took a video production course and went from someone who wasn't leaving, or was only leaving the home for very short periods of time, to someone who travelled to Germany, who filmed a short film on the refugee crisis over there, and that was award-winning. She's now at university with a life in front of her, and I think this is testament to her and the commitment that she gave to us, but also I think it just shows and reinforces how online in the right delivery method can really support students, but also their parents as well. Next slide, please. Thank you for listening, and I'm sure if there's been any questions coming through, we'll be happy to answer those.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lester. We have heard how Nisai aligned their mission to deliver education to learners worldwide remotely, and also reaching out to those in needs. Before we move on to the question and answer session, we have a special slot from Nisai with the title Parental Choice, Inclusive Education in Your Home. Stay tuned. We will hear from Nisai how education services are provided via online or remote learning to learners with disabilities worldwide. Now, may I please welcome again Mr. Lester to facilitate this session.
Thank you very much. Right, is it possible for me to share my screen for one moment?
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, wonderful.
We have around 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll keep it nice and short. What I'd like to do is just run through the Virtual Academy and just give you a bit more background. What we have got, if there are any questions, we do have the organisation I mentioned earlier, Gemma Learning, who are based in Jakarta, support learners with hearing impairment and additional needs, and they've been doing that since 2013, so we have representation from there. If there's any questions that relate to students or parents, we have, I believe, one of our students from Vietnam, a very inspiring young man called Frankie, who joined Nisai back in September 2020. And is doing qualifications with us now, I believe, with a favoritism for English and economics. And if there's any questions for a parent, I know Frankie's mother is with us today as well. And we've also got colleagues from our international team, so if there's any questions coming through, they'll be able to answer that as well. I've covered a number of aspects about Nisai and empowering impairments. What we have here is the Nisai Virtual Academy, and when I was talking about the holistic approach, I think it's really important to understand what a student gets from Nisai, how they access lessons, but also how we engage them in education. I think the key element to what we do, and a lot of the reason why schools and parents like Nisai, is the structured nature of what we do. So all our lessons are timetabled, especially for those with certain special needs. That requirement for structure in the day is absolutely key. Having that consistency, having that routine on an ongoing basis is always going to be important. So, because parents know when a child will be accessing their lessons, or with a school who provide Nisai to their learners, we're able to report back in terms of not just attendance, but also the contribution within the lesson. Our teachers are trained to be able to identify engagement, and a lot of their planning is based around this two-way interaction between the student and the teacher. I think it's really important where children are either accessing school on a part-time basis, or potentially who are accessing from home. The long-term aim is for for us is for a child to re-engage back into education or go on to the workplace. So we have structured ways of delivering our courses. There is the online live element. We also have those self-paced activities which are based around independent learning, but also homework as well. And where the homework comes into this is very much towards us being able to track and monitor the progress which learners are making. As with any school, and as a parent, you want to know that your child's developing and progressing at the right pace and to the right level. So the assignments and the homework which we offer is part of a wider strategy to track that progress. So we do a lot of formative assessment and questioning within the classroom, but also formal assessment on a 6-weekly basis. So we are very much focused on providing an experience which mirrors to a certain extent what a school does, and provides that level of structure, but just providing it in possibly a different way, or maybe a more gentle way, or with classes of smaller numbers, a more appropriate way. But at the end of the day, the focus is always going to be on impact. It's always going to be on outcomes. We talk very much about the social aspect and this holistic approach to education, and education extends beyond just the classroom. So we have resources available to support well-being, so health, community, and this is also focused on safety, but also their future. So options at 16, 18, whether they're going on to further or higher education or moving into the workplace. As mentioned previously, COVID has created a number of issues and challenges for children to socialise with their peers. So our clubs and societies are there to encourage learners to take part in activities outside of the classroom. They make friends, but what we find with the virtual academy and in this case the chill out zone is the environment needs to be safe, it needs to be secure, and parents need to have the confidence that their child is involved with activities that are monitored, moderated. But to give everyone an idea, the students who we tend to work with will be aged anywhere from upper primary through to upper secondary. We have many learners joining us who are working at above age appropriate levels. So going back to the comment earlier about timetabling based on ability rather than age, by doing it that way, we have young people and children aged maybe 8 or 9 who are doing curriculum that is geared towards those who are aged 14, 15. What this then does is makes the educational offer the most appropriate and relevant that it can be. If we were to teach at age appropriate levels in some cases, that's when our learners and students possibly disengage because the work is too easy. So it's very much again about stretching, challenging our students and making sure that they can be the best that they can be. But as well as the standard and core subjects are lower years, we are also a Cambridge International approved online school. We're one of a very, very small number. And what that allows us to do is provide an international curriculum based on UK teaching standards to provide the best delivery method and curriculum that we can based on quality teaching, quality content, but all the time working towards progressing the student, engaging the student, and developing core skills, not just in knowledge, but also in competency, supporting in the development of communication skills, critical thinking skills, creativity, and collaborating with each other. And these are 4 key areas which we encourage with our learners, because knowledge will go so far, but having the skills to be able to put that into practice will help learners develop, progress, and follow their aspirations. I think just as a final point, and I know we're quite tight on time. Okay. I think for me, it's really important that we're involved with the SEN agenda across the wider ASEAN region. I think it is quite clear that there needs to be as much knowledge and support out there for parents, but I think also the encouraging thing for me is that we're hearing more and more from schools who are looking to really be proactive at supporting children with SEN. And I think we have a very important part, and we all have a very important part to play in that. So thank you very much. Just a short, very quick overview there, but very happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lester. When we talk about online learning, to really understand how it works, it is always best to see the platform in person. Thank you for sharing with us.